We are right there and ready to go. So the Melbourne Collingwood game, and what I want to do, mate, I'll throw up a matchup. Yep. We'll have a chat about that, and then I want you to pick a matchup that you think is significant in that game.
You could have given me some notice.
No, I did. Just before 6.
I'll just come up with that off the top of my head right now.
You'll do this really well. I think you work best under pressure. The one for me, before we sort of set this up, so Collingwood, Melbourne, there's a couple of voices to speak to this game. Jeremy Howe spoke yesterday and Simon Goodwin over the weekend. This one is going to kick the finals off for us in great style. Both have got a home final despite the 1v4 finish. Melbourne probably the better performed team in the back part of the season, but Collingwood did enough to finish on top, and their best football was the best of the year. The matchup that I'm looking at is Darcy Moore comes back into the side and Melksham goes out of Melbourne. So there's two selections that we expect. But Darcy Moore's matchup is going to be crucial for Melbourne, and Melksham would have been a no-brainer for him just to bring the ball to ground and affect his intercept style. The question is, does it go to Tom McDonald? Does he come into the side and play that second tall role and be a player who looks at Darcy's intercept marking, or is it Joel Smith who's played it in some shape and form in this makeshift forward line that Simon Goodwin has looked to chop and change to work out who's going to play this second tall role. But I think that matchup in particular is going to be pivotal.
Crucial, yeah. From memory, last time these two teams played against each other in round 11, it was Fritsch. So Fritsch v Moore, and every time Fritsch would try and take him back to the goal square. So as soon as he felt Moore was with him, he'd drag him right back to the goal square. Now, injury is interesting, and playing injured players in finals, Bucks, I want to get your thoughts on that a little bit later with questions without notice, but whether he's capable of doing that with the interruption that he's had and whether he even plays remains to be seen. Not a direct matchup, but Adams and Viney, what they bring for both teams is a fascination for me. Both players built for finals and this combative time of the year. So ideally, they're the ones that I think can really get their teams going. Not as skillful as some of the other players in the side, like DeGoey and Petrarca and Oliver, and not as big a names, but in terms of what they can bring and the tenacity around the footy, both exceptional. And whilst they won't go head-to-head, I'm interested in how those two players perform in finals.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. They're both the heart and soul of their teams in respect to, if there's a loose ball to be won, if there's a hard ball to be got, you got to put your head over it. Who are you going to stand up around? And they're definitely the players that do that. The other one's Max Gawn. Yeah, his performances and Grundy's. I mean, Grundy's been a story all year.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a player who's been one of the champions of Collingwood, who's had to leave on a salary cap issue and gone across to Melbourne. Like that story hadn't been done to death already. I mean, it'd be a massive story going into this weekend or this Thursday night. It's not. I know that Jeremy Howe had his say about Brodie Grundy, which, if you were in Craig McRae's shoes, like when was it okay to talk about, even though he's a ex-teammate of yours, to talk about an opposition player and whether he should or shouldn't be at the club or not leading into a Thursday night game? Strong
thoughts. Actually, it was refreshing. I liked it. Once again, I wanted to ask you about that in questions without notice. Does Cox play? Does Big Mason Cox play, and how concerned would they be about Max Gawn and the cover that they need?
Yeah, that's where I was getting to with Max. He has been in great form, and the back third of the year was huge. Darcy Cameron's form has dropped off, that's part. I mean, you try and work out, okay, is it chicken or the egg with Collingwood a little bit? Some of their players have dropped off, and is it because the team dynamic hasn't been as strong that the individuals drop off, or vice versa? But I think funnily enough, because Darcy Cameron's form hasn't been that great, I think they do need both he and Cox in the side. If either of them were hitting it out of the park, potentially you don't need the other. But that is part of the conundrum with Collingwood at the moment. When you don't have players that are playing at their best, you might feel like you need to have a little bit of depth in that position. So I think they'll share the load against Gawn.
All right, you can have your say on that. Join in the conversation. How do you see it, the matchups that you're interested in? 0433 98 11 16 as we move on to the Friday night game.
Yeah, and this proves to be huge. Carlton, Sydney, the Blues roller coaster of a season has led them to finishing with a bullet pretty much, finishing fifth on the ladder and earning their finals position in great style. There was a little bit of the echoes of the past from 12 months ago with some close loss against Melbourne, but a close win against Melbourne, which probably cleansed some of what they felt 12 months ago. But the Blues fans would be looking forward to this matchup, and Sydney have been there, done that. They've come back around, unlike their the team that they were vanquished by in Geelong last year. But we've got some comments here from Paddy Cripps and Callum Mills about the matchup and what they expect to face against each other this Friday night. Well, Carlton have cut their cloth on being a great stoppage team. And the last round, for what it was worth, the GWS Giants were able to look after the stoppage game and force Carlton into transition more often and prevent Carlton from being able to score from stoppage. So that's going to be a bit of a template that Sydney will follow for right or wrong. And looking after Patrick Cripps is a big part of that around stoppage. So I expect Callum Mills to lean in on him hard, and then go and find his own ball out of that in transition. So they're the type of matchups that I think Sydney will be looking for to make sure they get the game on their terms.
Don't mind the wings. I don't know how much Goulden will spend on the wing. He's probably been maybe 60-40 on ball wing, but Akers and Goulden, if that's the way that it goes, will be really important on how those two players control that side of the ground and how much on-ball time Goulden plays. I mean, I think John Longmire will rely on his midfield to match Carlton early, and if things go awry, then Goulden probably goes in there. But how much attention he gets from the Blues, because he's the biggest weapon. But they got a few, Sydney. I mean, Blakey across half-back.
Yep.
Is there a plan for him? He'll just continually take the game on as he has done. He's had a huge year.
Jake Lloyd's one that flies under the radar.
Campbell. So they got some terrific ball users. How brave they can be, the Swans, with their ball use, and can the Blues get it to a stoppage game and stop that? Will be interesting from the coach's box.
The interesting one is Callum Mills mentioned then around their fourth quarter fade outs. So in round 20, Essendon kicked 8 out of the last 10 goals in that game. In round 23, Adelaide kicked 8 out of the last 10 goals. And in the last round against Melbourne, Melbourne kicked 6 goals in the last 6 goals of the game to get over the top. So then talking about that doesn't make it better. And having that reality doesn't make it any different. See, Sydney can start really well, but they've got to win the game twice. They've got to get it off to a good start, and then they've got to face these demons around not being able to finish games off. And that means that Carlton will feel like they're a chance no matter where they are going into the last quarter, which is not what you want to give your opposition.
Bucks, how do you see this one? You're pumped up about this one.
Absolutely fascinated by this game. I think this is going to be a cracking game, and I understand that it's a little off Broadway. I mean, St Kilda sort of coughed and spluttered a little bit through the third quarter of this year, but I think they've finished. They've hit the tape hard. I think they're playing as good a footy now and as hard to beat footy, as solid a footy as anyone. And GWS are the form team of the comp.
Did you see the Saints social media team line both of us up?
No, what happened?
Oh, they put like a motivational video on their social channels and all the people that have written them off this year. And
yeah, I thought they were going to be. I thought they were going to be bottom four. Yeah. I really did.
I think they might have used that quote from you. I think you said, "I can't see them getting anywhere near 11 games."
Yeah,
and I think I said it's been a wasted year at the point throughout the year where it looked like it was going to go off track for them. So they're using that, and the nobody believes in us theme is what the Saints are using for this final series.
Well, yeah. Well, if that's whether it's for their fans or for their players, I'm sure it's not for their players. I mean, Ross wouldn't really give a flying about what we thought, and that's one of his strengths. Like he just goes about with what he's got and then just builds it, and that's what they were able to do. And I've been super impressed by what they have been able to do. The matchup for me that stands out, obviously Toby Green, All-Australian captain. How good was that last week? Callum Wilkie, All-Australian player. And I think those two will find I mean, Wilkie's been as good defensively as any defender in the comp. He's his intercept marking game is established. But what has probably been underrated a little is how good he is in one-on-ones and how hard he is to find space on and to
He usually gets the tall though, doesn't he?
Yeah, he usually gets a marking threat. So you would think it's either Hogan or Riccardi in that balance. But I think Toby Green is clearly going to be the name that is going to be circled over and over and over on the St Kilda board, and he's going to be the guy they've got to look to stop and look to prevent. GWS spread their forwards really well when they go into their front half. They move the ball so quickly, and their forwards stay away from each other. They make it really difficult to defend, and if they've got an outnumber, they just pick the best target going forward. So Toby isn't as he's damaging in those because he's smart to find the space, but. Yeah, Callum Brown and other forwards are standing up in those situations, but it's when there's a pack or there's a bit of a ball in dispute, that's when Toby Green stands up in that front third and you need your best defender on him. So I think Wilkie would be the one that would get that job for me.
I just feel like the Giants have got a few more outside threats from their midfield, so like their run and spread will be interesting with Cornelio and Kelly. Green can match Steele inside. Can they get them on the outside? And the ruck battle is, I mean, how influential can rucks be and whether they cancel each other out? But Rowan Marshall's work around the ground is significant.
And Briggs in clearance.
Briggs has been just a bull for them and a battering ram.
Does Sam Taylor play?
I don't think so.
So what is it? It's 20 days. It'll be 20 days by the time we get there.
I got word that he's seriously a chance, but I think they'll leave that until the last minute. But I think it would be a bit of a risk.
So a King Taylor matchup would have
been terrific. But
well, the other one is the runners, like Brad Hill v Lockie Whitfield potentially. Yeah. There's going to be some beauties.
All right, let's move on to the second qualifying final. It's up at the Gabba where Brisbane haven't lost this year, Bucks.
I just get a feeling Port Adelaide are just flying under the radar. I still haven't got what is happening over there. Are we ramping it up? Are the Adelaide media going nuts over there?
No, I think there's not a lot of faith that they can get it done against Brisbane there. So look, they're going to get some personnel back. Mackenzie, whilst he's an off-Broadway player, is important to them. So they need to get him back, so he'll come back. Marshall will play, didn't play round 22. Dixon won't play, and Scotty Lycett, they need to get back. He played some minutes in the sample yesterday, so he will come back in, but personnel-wise, they're going to be challenged.
Yeah, they will be, and the coaches had this to say of the matchup coming up this weekend. It's been a season against the odds for the coach, for the players. I just think there's something about Port. And there's something about I think they prefer to have their backs against the wall. And I've been a member of a team like that. And I reckon
Which one?
Well, Port Adelaide Collingwood 02, when we came up against Port Adelaide 1 versus 4th. And I reckon.
Was that the one where Paul Lacuria had about 45
against
possessions?
Josh Franker. Yeah. And that was, I didn't play that game. I watched it, witnessed it. It was one of the most disciplined games I'd seen. I think Port Adelaide have got that feel where, okay, when people talk us down or when people don't think that we're capable of doing something, that just puts us in a headspace that you then get the best from them. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got a super performance from Port Adelaide up there. The midfield battle's huge. Rosie Butters, Horn Francis, and the guy that I'm looking at is Willem Drew and his role on Lockie Neal. Now, obviously, the Lions midfield, McCluggage, Berry, Dunkley, and Neal himself are huge, but Drew will find himself to Neal. Neal's last 2 weeks have been excellent. After a quiet period, and you're going to lower your expectations when you set the bar so high every now and then. But his last 2 weeks, he's got his zip back in around stoppages. He's working really hard from contest to contest. So I that's a matchup that I'm looking for because he's one of the few run-with players that gets the job done on his opposition in terms of touches and gets the ball himself.
Yeah, and Neal's record against Port Adelaide is just extraordinary. He loves playing against Port. The other one is who goes to Charlie Cameron, who must be giving whoever the job will go to sleepless nights this week. What a nightmare it is. I don't think there's an obvious one. Bit of Burton, but he may need to play taller. Lockie Jones will be in the mix. I don't think it's a job for Kane Farrell, and previously would have gone to Darcy Byrne-Jones, who's playing now as a small forward. So
I think that Port Adelaide's best way of defending Charlie Cameron is to keep the ball in their front half, but Brisbane are territory bullies when they play up at the Gabba.
It was a big awards week. Last week we saw the All-Australian announce the Coaches Association Award, the Lee Matthews Trophy, and the Rising Star. You were the only person to give Mitch Owen 5 votes in the Rising Star. Why?
I thought his season was exceptional. And the most exceptional of the young talent. Now, 10 other selectors didn't agree. They thought Harry Sheezel was it. And I think if you take a couple of steps back and look at and project to careers ahead, I think Sheezel and potentially Ashcroft, maybe even Jai Amos, have the best potential CVs. But for a standalone season, what I saw Mitch Owens do, and the contribution that he made to his team, the different roles he was asked to play, the position he played, the competitiveness and just strength that he displayed in those roles, whether it's a backup ruck or a tall forward or just a ball-winning forward in the front half, I thought his season was amazing. I think it's been underrated in many ways, and I wanted to acknowledge him for that because I think Sheezel's season's been amazing. But it was out of those two for me. I think Ashcroft was thereabouts when he injured his knee. As I said, Amos has been huge. A little bit off Broadway over there for the Dockers, and I thought Finn Callaghan was my other pick, and that was with Darcy Wilmot. Probably McVie were the other ones that were in my estimation for that last vote. But Owens and what he did, you very rarely see a player playing his first full season able to do that. And strong body, mature player, but I thought he was huge.
You got one?
Yeah, I do. Tell me about Adam Kingsley. When we get to September, will his personality shift? What type of player leader was he when you got to September?
I don't think it'll shift. I think he's been pretty consistent all year with his messaging. What I feel he is authentic. And when he speaks, you believe what he says. And there's a no-nonsense message that comes through when he talks. He did it the hard way as a player. Like he was rookie, went to one club, didn't quite work, came to another club. Even at the end of 2003, I think the club said, we're not sure about you and whether we're going to give you a contract, so we want you to come back in pre-season and train and make you earn your contract, which he did, and then was a vital part of the premiership piece for us in 2004. He was a terrific mentor for me, and a couple of times was one of the few players that told me to pull my head in, which I look back and I really respect. And a couple of times.
So tough love.
Yeah, I carried on a bit and he just pulled me aside in a really kind but forthright way. So I always respected him for that. So look, is he coach of the year?
Yeah, that was the next question. So where do you have your top three? I think we overlook the obvious too often.
Yes, which is?
Well, for me, Craig McRae is the coach of the year. And I think Simon Goodwin and Michael Voss are probably on the podium.
How have you left Ken Hinkley? How have you left Ken Hinkley out of that mix?
Because I didn't say his name, and I put Kingsley and Lyon probably in the fourth and fifth, and then Hinkley's in the mix with that. But yeah, that's where I've got them. I think Kingsley's been amazing, but I think there's been some guys that are at the top that have done pretty well,
and some guys down the bottom. I think.
So who do you have?
Well, I think Sam Mitchell's been the equal to any of those for what he's done.
Yeah, fair point
on expectation. But with Coach of the Year, rightly or wrongly, it can't be judged until the end of the final series.
And it's judged after prelim.
Yeah, because our game, we just judge who wins it. We're not like American sports where we celebrate winning seasons. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. It's just the way that it is. So you can't be voting on who the Coach of the Year is until the end of the final series. Had a look at West Coast Best and Fairest, which happened over the weekend. It is alarming how... So some of the results in this, and you can deep dive it any way that you like, but Tim Kelly won it and he was deserving to win it. Terrific season. Well done to Tim. And Oscar Allen, the other standout for what he did, All-Australian squad, 53 goals in that side. After that, is it about an uglier Best and Fairest results as you're going to see? So I'll give you an example of that. Shannon Hearn finished 5th. He's now retired. Mm-hmm. He played 13 games. That must be the softest top 5 finish to a Best and Fairest ever. Andrew Gaff who probably shouldn't be playing AFL football at all, with all due respect, despite the fact he's been an excellent player. But the time is up for Andrew, finished 7th in their best and fairest. Alex Witherden probably wouldn't be on a list of most clubs. Once again, with all due respect, finished 8th in their best and fairest. So they've gone with their coach again, and rightly or wrongly, you can have your debate on that. But the alarming trend is their playing list and what they don't have, because the young ones coming in aren't going to help. It's the senior players, this top 10 of the best and fairest, that's going to drive the improvement for this group. So perhaps it's even worse than we think at the Eagles.
Well, if that's a question without notice, I've got no answers.
Is that the worst top 10 of a best and fairest you've ever seen? Is a question without notice for you?
Well, you'd have to go back to some of the worst sort of 2-3 year periods. Maybe the
Giants,
Brisbane Bears when they first came out. The Giants, maybe Fitzroy way back when. What did their top 10 look like?
I don't know, Bucks. That's Jaden Hunt finished 4th.
Not great. No, not great.
All right, that's the question without notice.
Quite poor.
It's your turn.
No, I don't have anything more for you, mate.
I do. I got more. I got a lot more.
Why? Yeah. Question without notice. Did you not realise that you're not supposed to be talking about nominations for All Australian? I'm going to throw that one at you.
No. The answer to that is no.
No. The difference between the nominations from clubs and the discussion point, because as All Australian selectors, we cop a bit of flack, don't you? I didn't actually realise when I took on the gig
who was
that
the
this was going to
player
happen.
that you copped the most feedback from that was unlucky, that missed out?
Well, Dustin Martin was the one that was given a lot of groundswell of support late. So that was probably one that people were on about. There was some campaign.
I copped Libba. So Libba was the one that I copped the most.
Well, we'd love to open up on air, but I wonder if did you when you sat back, because obviously we were one of a larger panel, when you sat back and saw the team announced, was there any regret? Did you have any regret?
I loved the team.
I thought the team was awesome.
Did you have regret?
There was one,
okay.
And I don't think it's even worth talking about.
Well, you can't say that and then not
reveal
it.
Because
every selector has their own people that they think.
Well, Kingy went on after on the panel and said, I think it was Wilkie shouldn't have been in and so on. I said, okay, well, if you don't reckon they should be in, tell us who needs to go. Oh, so, no, the two that were out, Dustin Martin should have been in, and they should have had either Liberatore or Viney in. I go, okay, well, if you're going to put one in, tell us who you're going to take out, because that's the challenge of it. You can't play 26, 27. I think that Libba, and the argument around having a third Bulldogs player, was part of the discussion, given the season that they'd had. But I thought Libbers was an All-Australian year. He was pretty stiff.
That was the one you had regret on.
Yeah.
Jeremy Howe's been really outspoken on his mate Brodie Grundy. He said, this is according to the Herald Sun, a quote from them. Don't have the audio of it, but got it written. Absolutely, he needs to find a home where he is valued. I feel like when the trade went through, and I know they spoke about the ruck combo or playing ruck forward, you ask anyone here, he was never going to be a forward, never, ever. I didn't really see it unfolding the way in a positive manner, but he's a ruthless, dominant ruck. He's an extra midfielder, but he's a ruck, and I hope he gets to play that role. To me, that sounds like Collingwood need him.
You reckon?
Oh, he's an extra midfielder. He's a dominant ruck. And I hope he gets to play that way. I know he wants to be the dominant ruck, and I know wherever he goes, as long as he is the number one ruck, he will be dominant.
Well, he's not departed Collingwood because he couldn't play that role. So in the end, there are list management decisions that are largely around managing cap more than who is going to play in your best side, because your best side's going to change and evolve. But Brodie Grundy isn't at Collingwood because Collingwood doesn't need a number one ruckman.
Because he was paid too much for the role that he plays, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the balance of the bit that sits at the bottom of the iceberg. You see what pops out at the top, but there's so much that's going on at the bottom. Now, Jeremy Howe has an opinion about an ex-teammate of his in Brodie Grundy, which I happen to have the same opinion of. Melbourne weren't taking him over as a forward. They thought that they could do dual rucks, number one ruckman that could hit hard the opposition ruckman hard and be able to wear them down and to play 50-50 each, but then they would have to play forward time from there. Neither of them have proven to be damaging as a forward. Melbourne have played their best football with Max Gawn as a sole ruckman, and he even admitted over the weekend that his form wasn't great when Melbourne weren't winning either. So something needed to change.
My follow-up question without notice for you, Bucks. I get that Grundy's meeting with, we're about to find out whether he's met with Sydney, certainly met with Port Adelaide. What's the benefit for Melbourne to trade him? So it's just that everyone just thinks it's a given that Grundy's at another club, and he may well be, but what's in it for Melbourne to trade him? Then they have to go and find another ruckman. They're not going to get as good a second ruckman as Grundy.
No,
so what is it? Salary cap relief, and that's
if you're going to have a backup ruckman for Max Gawn, you're not going to be spending the money that you're spending on Brodie Grundy. They thought that they could use him in the senior 22. They still may believe that they can do that going forward, but Broads has to be on board with that. He's not going to want to be sitting the back third of a season.
I know he doesn't. But he's contracted. He, with his management, chose to go to Melbourne and chose that. He's got 4 years left on a deal. Doesn't matter what he thinks.
Well, since when?
It's a business.
Since when has the pendulum swung back towards clubs? If players want something, they generally get it.
Well, they shouldn't. And there's a couple of examples where
just because they shouldn't doesn't make it so.
The Giants made Bobby Hill stay there for a year that he was contracted. I think Rory Lobb wanted to get out of Freo for a while. He stayed and kicked 38 goals, I think it was, for the Dockers in a finals campaign. So we've seen Ryan O'Keefe back in the day want to be traded. Papley wanted to be traded. Not always. Often, you're right. Often.
How well did that end up for the club?
Pretty well for Papley and Sydney.
Yeah, but how well did in that time? How well did it end up for the club? Ryan O'Keefe, I suppose that ended up really well, didn't it? But I think that in the end, what you want is a happy group, and to have a happy group, you've got to have happy campers. You're going to have to break a few eggs, there's no doubt, but you need to be able to know that you can manage that going forward. I don't know whether Melbourne need that. In terms of what they're projecting to, but Max Gawn's not going to be there forever.
That's what I'm saying.
But neither's Brodie Grundy.